We're going to start the awards ceremony now, and it's a very important evening for a number of reasons. Mr. Secretary General, our gracious hosts here in Qatar, party delegates, colleagues and friends, my name is Will Travers, I'm the President of the Species Survival Network, and on behalf of the SSN Board and the 82 member organisations, we're growing just like Cites itself. Welcome to the 2010 Species Survival Network reception in honour of the recipients of the Clark R. Bavin Wildlife Law Enforcement Awards presented by the Animal Welfare Institute. I'm joined by the Animal Welfare Institute's DJ Schubert, who will help present the awards along with the Secretary General. As many of you know, the awards are named after the late Chief of the Division of Law Enforcement for the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, who pioneered the division's highly effective undercover investigations and sting operations. Each meeting of the Conference of the Parties, we confront serious issues of life and death for the world's wildlife, issues that could decide the fate of entire species, serious issues indeed. And while we often find ourselves on different sides of these issues, perhaps adversaries in the debates, it seems to me that two common threads often prevail. One is a desire for CITES to be the most effectively implemented treaty in the world, and the other is that whatever the laws, policies or regulations that we enact to control or restrict wildlife trade, a robust, technically supported and well-funded legion of wildlife law enforcement officers should be in place to uphold the laws passed by national governments and the decisions taken by CITES parties at each of its meetings. Let us always remember our commonalities. In a moment you'll hear from the outgoing Secretary General as he shares the details of this year's Bavin awardees. And since this is his last COP, let me offer a brief word about Willem. I feel like it's a wedding speech now. Well, no. As Secretary General, Willem has been a thoughtful leader of this convention and, from my perspective and that of my colleagues in the SSN, an accessible one to NGOs. His willingness to hear us directly and often on a range of matters is much appreciated. But most of all, Willem has always been an enthusiastic supporter of these Wildlife Law Enforcement Awards that are presented at each COP. He has stood under the hot lights time and time again, passing sculptures to deserving wildlife champions. He takes his role in this ceremony as seriously as the awardees take their role in protecting wildlife, and for that I am truly grateful. So, ladies and gentlemen, for one last time, it is my pleasure to introduce the Secretary General of CITES, Mr. Willem Ruimstekers, to, with DJ's help, present the 2010 Clark R. Bavin Wildlife Law Enforcement Awards. Thank you very much indeed.
First of all, thank you, Will, for your kind words. And yes, you're finally rid of me. New times, new people. But what I leave behind in the Secretariat, I think, is a good team of people that will assist the new Secretary General, and I will make sure that the new Secretary General is as open and as accessible to Species Survival Network and other NGOs as I have tried to be. There's one thing about these receptions, and that is that they are the noisiest I have ever had in my life. And which is, I don't think, appropriate given the fact that we are awarding people, some people who have given their lives in trying to enforce CITES. And I think you don't have to show respect for me or my speech, but at least for the people who are getting these rewards. So if I can ask you to, I know it's a bit long, but yes, maybe you can try to you've got a lot to talk anyway in the next 2 weeks, so maybe you can spare your breath and listen and honor the people that we are going to honor tonight. So, delegates, observers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, friends, as always, it is my pleasure to take part in the Species Survival Network's reception to honor the recipients of the Clark R. Bavin Wildlife Law Enforcement Award. It has indeed been an honor for me at each COP to help recognize those who demonstrate heroic excellence in wildlife protection and Cites implementation. I thank the Species Survival Network for arranging this evening's tribute and the Animal Welfare Institute for sponsoring the Bavin Award. Preventing overexploitation of wildlife is a real challenge, and there are precious few individuals willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that wildlife laws are fully enforced, even literally laying their lives on the line to save wildlife for future generations. We should indeed be concerned by the condition of our planet and the continuing loss of biodiversity. But as I said in the opening ceremony, what CITES need is action, not words. Our response to modern conservation challenges must be to renew our resolve, work harder to protect wildlife species and the ecosystems on which they depend. We need to fully equip and train the talented and determined people who are on the ground putting our words into real action. The wildlife law enforcement officers in each of our countries. I know the challenge is great, but our determination must be greater. And while some species are at risk, we should all be thankful that there are men and women willing to make sacrifices to protect them. Without wildlife law enforcement, what would be the status of wildlife populations? Today's poachers and profiteers are well armed and well funded, but governments no longer have to combat them in isolation. Countries are communicating and cooperating with each other as never before, sharing intelligence and resources. Interpol's Wildlife Crime Group has significantly enhanced and refocused its effort to aid in the fight. I should also mention the recent but unique cooperation and collaboration of the Cites Secretariat with UNODC, the World Customs, that's the United Nations Organization for Crime and Drugs, the World Customs Organization, Interpol again, and the Cites Secretariat, of course, and the World Bank. We have put our forces together to combat wildlife crime, and that has never happened before. Some countries have established specific bureaus or departments entirely dedicated to enforcing national and international wildlife trade laws. So there is hope. And tonight, for the fifth and, as Will said the last time, as Secretary General of CITES, and I still don't know why people get retired in the United Nations system at the age of 48. But they do. So I have the honor of sharing the stage with some of the people who combat illegal wildlife trade and enforce our national and international wildlife trade laws. They are armed rangers patrolling the bush. They are trainers or administrators. They are criminal investigators working to intercept illegal shipments. They expose wildlife criminals who use the internet, and they prosecute wildlife criminals. And each of them is highly deserving of the 2010 Clark R. Bavin Wildlife Law Enforcement Award, and of our sincere gratitude. So let's start